who is the 1%? Well, actually, it's less than 1% because if you divide 5,000 people into a population of 1.4 million, you get 0.004%. So let's start again. Who is the 0.004%? And how can such a tiny ethnic minority in a society like Trinidad and Tobago control such an enormous chunk of the economy? And the answer to that lies in the same way that an approximate 1% white population in South Africa was able to establish a system of racist apartheid and govern an approximate 95% black population. And the answer to that is to establish a system. But again, how can such few people outside of politics establish a system that controls all? And again, the answer is in ensuring that you finance politicians who have ideas, who are popular with the masses, and then in the policy that they make represent the interest of the capitalist class ideologically, while send out messages of symbolism and rhetoric to represent the masses of the people using charm, deception, and misleading techniques of bamboozling the general public and getting them to support emotionally rather than using logic, reason, and calculated, careful decision making to determine exactly how voting for a political party would benefit a specific community. So systems are established, and out of those systems, there are subsystems that ensure that once a corrupt methodology of political rule based on injustice is incorporated, it would stay there for as long as you employ individuals on different levels to maintain it. So in a way, it works like magic. So the racism, oppression, exploitation, and tyranny now becomes institutionalized, meaning that if you get a job within the system to maintain a part of it, you cannot revolutionarily engage in any kind of opposition against a system of corruption and injustice because it's not in your job description. So you now have three social classes, generally speaking: the poorer class or the working class, which is the majority, approximately 89%. Then you have an approximate middle class of 10%, that is, of course, growing and expanding. And then the top 1%. But the relationship with the forces of production and means of production within the economy is what determines your social class. So the top 1% have control and domination over the economy, while the bottom 89%, of course, approximate figures, have a dependency condition relationship with the economy. And then this system is rigidly maintained by three methods or techniques. One, through the education. All that we learn in school through the curriculum or the syllabus is called ruling class ideology, where you are taught in such a way that you believe that where you are is your destined place and you're supposed to be there. This is why poor people sometimes celebrate when they get minimum wage employment, whereas rich people would not even accept owning 9 or 8 buildings instead of 11 or 12 based on the contracts that they would expect from the regime that is in power. So education through ruling class ideology, which is incorporated in the learning through the entire school system, is method or technique number one. Then technique number two is through a kind of totalitarian regime approach where there is a military, police force, regiment, army that are enforcers of laws whereby you are required through taxation, registration, through your procedure of getting a driver's license or a birth certificate or registration for employment or establishment in business or whatever the standard procedure of law requires through legal affairs, that we as citizens follow a particular or specific channel, then we are kept in place when those laws are really made as a result of the influence of the rich. And the third major technique after education and military totalitarianism, where our police force now resembles an army at war rather than a protecting and serving group or association. You now have the political deceit and deception, whereby political parties ensure that they rally the support of individuals on different levels within the society to get them to fit in a part or place in society and believe that they should be there and happy and pleased with it. So the solution to the idea of the 1% is equal distribution of resources and justice through the law. But this could only come if those who are within the educational system are given a different kind of teaching that drives them towards business ownership, entrepreneurship, land ownership, control of the forces of the economy, acquisition of land, which is real estate, and a larger growing thinking consciousness of the young children who are graduating out of the educational system thinking that they should get a job rather than create a job. So the 1% remains in total control because the educational system supports their position there. The politicians are paid by them through campaign financing. Hence, they pay them back through the legislation that they pass that is favorable to them. And they also have control over the security of the state. So while gang violence is a problem, the biggest problem about it is that the gangs are fighting and killing each other without even realizing that they're all in the same gang. And there has to be a new kind of peace. And from that kind of peace, we could establish an empowerment. Because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said there are three sciences that the enemy never wanted to teach us. One, the science of business. Two, the science of reproduction. Three, the science of warfare. And he said that business is warfare. And we shouldn't even go into business without setting up an army. But not an army to fight in an ignorant war, because, of course, it's foolish to take a knife to a gunfight, but it's even more foolish to take a gun to a mind war. And the war that we're in today is a war against ignorance, whereby a gun cannot help you. So we require a new enlightened consciousness where we will support the business of the poor, that we will encourage entrepreneurship and the spirit of business leadership in the minds of the young people coming through the primary and the secondary school system, and that we must establish a guaranteed contract with those who seek to represent us politically, which they are binded by. And they have to know that we can no longer be dependent on a system that does not seek our best interest. So we are, through the Black Agenda Project, building the Kwame Ture Education Center, which will feature not only early childhood care and education and the teaching of consciousness for our younger students, but also a mini African museum that will inspire our youth to get up and react to the negative historical forces of slavery that have kept us down, but that we have carried in our minds in this generation, where they start our history, whereby they introduce us to ourselves as slaves, when we were the builders of civilization, the first human beings on the planet, and the creators of mathematics, science, art, music, history, and architecture, with the first towns, villages, cities, and civilizations, as well as universities, colleges, and schools in this world, all being from Africa, created by African people. But they deny you of that knowledge to try to re-enslave you, so you react to the system like if you're still a slave, but you need to be liberated. And we have a great teacher, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who has not just spoken the word, but he has created institutions with the word, from schools, farms, businesses, restaurants, bakeries, clinics, and a brotherhood, which is an army of good for all of our people, to promote consciousness and not conflict, to promote ideology and not ignorance, and to promote a destiny of greatness rather than death, damnation, and destruction, which is a self-destruction. So I say, beloved, reflect on what we said with you in this broadcast, and continue to listen to the Black Agenda online radio station at www.blackagendaproject.com.